He handed me the divorce papers just as I was about to tell him I was pregnant. The room was silent except for the soft ticking of a brass wall clock and the muted drip of rain against the high windows. Elena Brooks sat stiffly on the edge of a leather chair, fingers tangled in her lap, her mouth half open, words poised but suspended in air. She looked across the glossy table at Nathan, who barely met her eyes as he slid the thick envelope toward her. Her engagement ring, still snug on her finger, gleamed under the recessed ceiling light, a cold, ironic sparkle. She had rehearsed this moment differently. In her mind, she would reach for his hand, smile nervously, and whisper, "We're having a baby." Instead, she stared at the heavy cream paper with her name typed in bold across the top. Her lips trembled, not from fear but confusion. Her body still numb from the cold marble floor of the building's lobby, a prelude. It now seemed. To this clinical finality. Nathan cleared his throat and leaned back, adjusting his cufflinks. "Haley's 3 months along," he said without ceremony, as if this were a quarterly report. Elena blinked. "Haley?" Her voice cracked. He nodded, still not looking directly at her. "We didn't plan it, but it changes things." Her brain skidded against the information like a car on ice. She couldn't find purchase. Haley, the intern-turned-associate she'd trained just last fall? The woman who laughed too loudly at Nathan's jokes. Who always lingered too long in the lab after hours. Her stomach turned. "I was going to tell you something today," she said softly. Nathan finally looked up. His eyes were dry, firm, unreadable. "What?" "I'm pregnant," she whispered. His jaw tensed, and for a flicker of a second, something in his expression cracked. But it wasn't empathy. It was annoyance. "I can't do this," he said after a pause. "It's already complicated, and I'm not going back." She stared at him. "You think this is a choice? You think you get to walk away because someone else beat me to a due date?" Nathan's face hardened. "She's having my child. That's something you never gave me." Elena felt the words slice through her ribs. "I was going to," she said. The air collapsed between them. Silence. The attorney, a man whose name Elena couldn't remember, tapped his pen gently on the table. "If you could initial here. And here." She didn't move. She couldn't. Her hand had curled into a fist on the table. Knuckles white. Everything inside her screamed to throw the papers back at him. To shout. To demand an explanation. But what would it change? He was already gone. Nathan stood. "It's for the best. Elena, you'll see that one day." She didn't respond. She didn't watch him leave. She only heard the soft click of the door and the exhale she didn't realize she was holding. The air smelled faintly of ink, old books, and lemon polish. When she finally stood, she walked slowly, her legs too light, her chest too heavy. The elevator ride down was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional cough of a stranger. No one made eye contact. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. It had thickened. The city was a gray blur, taxis hissing on wet asphalt. Umbrellas bumping like indifferent soldiers. Everyone rushing, no one looking up. She stepped into it, the papers pressed against her chest like a shield she didn't remember grabbing. The cold soaked through her blazer, through her skin, down into her bones, but it grounded her. As she stood on the corner of Lexington and 47th, her heels sinking slightly into the damp concrete, she reached down and laid a hand against her belly. "We'll survive, baby, even if it's just us." The baby kicked for the first time, just as the eviction notice slid under the door. Elena sat frozen, her hand instinctively pressing against her belly. The faint flutter was unmistakable. A soft tremor like butterfly wings, the first sign of life from the tiny presence inside her. And then, as if choreographed by irony itself, came the harsh scrape of paper slipping beneath the doorframe. Her eyes darted down to the bright orange rectangle stamped, "Final Notice." The walls of the sublet seemed to tighten around her. Peeling paint curled above the radiator. The flickering overhead light buzzed with discontent. The mattress behind her sagged in the middle. Its sheets rumpled from another restless night. Outside, the rumble of the 7 train passed like thunder beneath the thin concrete floor. Mrs. Rivera had been kind enough to rent the basement to her without asking too many questions. "Cash only," she'd said. "Don't bring trouble." Elena hadn't. Trouble had followed her anyway. She stared at the envelope. Heart pounding. Every instinct screamed to tear it up. To pretend she hadn't seen it. But she already knew what it said. 3 months of missed rent. No job, no prospects, no partner, no backup plan. She stood and walked to the duffel bag in the corner. The only suitcase she'd taken from the apartment on Park Avenue. Beneath a stack of prenatal vitamins and a frayed hoodie. She found it. A folded photo from their wedding in upstate New York. Sunlight caught in Nathan's hair. His smile sharp in a tuxedo. Elena, radiant, blind with certainty. She didn't unfold it. Later that afternoon, she stood in front of a tiny pawn shop sandwiched between a laundromat and a payday loan center. Her fingers gripped the band of her wedding ring like it might burn. Inside, a man with wire-framed glasses and a Yankees cap barely looked up. "Gold's dipped this month," he muttered. "It's real," Elena said. He shrugged, weighed it on a small scale, scribbled something on a receipt, and handed her 2 20s and 3 5s. She stared at the money for a moment, then stuffed it into her coat pocket. The OB/GYN clinic smelled like bleach and uncertainty. In the waiting room, a toddler screamed while his mother scrolled on her phone. A TV played daytime court shows with the volume too low to hear. Elena sat hunched, one hand on her lower back, the other cradling her stomach. Dr. Thomason's office was brighter, but not warmer. She was young, no nonsense. Her lab coat crisp. "You're slightly anemic," she said, eyes on the chart, "and your blood pressure's edging into risky territory. Stress isn't helping." "I'm trying," Elena murmured. Dr. Thomason sighed. "Then try harder. Eat, rest, find support." Support, as if it were an item on a shelf. That night, Elena trudged home beneath a drizzle, one street lamp at a time. Her shoes soaked through, toes frozen. She passed shuttered bodegas and graffiti-splattered subway entrances, each more indifferent than the last. The train roared somewhere beneath her. She walked with one hand clutched around her belly, whispering nonsense to the child inside, half lullaby, half apology. At the steps to her building, the world tilted, her knees buckled. She caught herself, then slipped again, the wet concrete scraping her palms. A warm hand gripped her elbow. "Easy," a voice said. A neighbor, she didn't know his name. He helped her sit on the bottom step. "You okay?" She nodded, though her face crumpled. He didn't press, just waited until her breath steadied. Then nodded once, left without a word. Later, curled beneath the one remaining blanket, Elena stared at the ceiling. Her cheeks still burned from the fall. Her belly shifted again, another kick. "No one's saving us," she whispered into the dark. "So I will." The laptop was old, the screen flickering when it powered on. She opened her inbox, searched for the old Stanford email she'd saved years ago. Strategic design, full online. 1 year. She clicked through, rereading the requirements. Then she scrolled to the bottom, hovering over the blue rectangle. Elena opened her laptop. Clicks. Apply now, on an online strategic design program. Want to start over? The subject line read. She almost deleted it, then saw the sender's name. Elena hesitated, index finger hovering over the trash icon. The inbox was full of unopened messages, promotional emails, overdue notices, irrelevant newsletters she'd never unsubscribed from. But this one, buried between a notice about prenatal yoga and a reminder from her local clinic, had her frozen. Mila Tran. They hadn't spoken in years. Not since graduation. Not since Nathan. Mila had been her roommate at Stanford, all energy and color and chaos. The kind of woman who wore mismatched socks on purpose and always found poetry in mistakes. They'd lost touch, life pulling them in opposite directions. But here was her name, steady and sure, attached to a 5-word lifeline. She clicked. The message was brief. Ward Tech, a rising star in tech health integration, had an opening for a strategic projects analyst. Mila, now head of people there, remembered Elena's old thesis, the one on eye-guided patient diagnostics. "You ever think about trying again?" she'd written. "I think you'd crush this." Elena stared at the blinking cursor for almost an hour before typing her reply. She deleted it, typed again. Finally, she hit send. The flight to California was paid with borrowed miles and the last of her tax refund. Lily sat in her lap, wide-eyed at the window. She was barely a year old but had already outgrown the carrier Elena once thought would last too. At SFO, Elena gripped the stroller with white knuckles, whispering to herself over and over. One step, then the next. Wardtech's temporary headquarters looked nothing like the corporate monoliths she remembered from New York. Glass walls, wide, open spaces, plants, real ones, lined the walkways. It felt like walking into the future. Or at least someone else's better present. Mila greeted her at reception with the same fierce hug she'd always given in college. "You look good," she said, pulling back to scan Elena's face. Elena snorted. "You're a terrible liar." Mila grinned. "You're right, you look like hell, but in that Phoenix kind of way." They laughed, and just like that, the years between them compressed into a breath. The interview was in a conference room called Helix. Julian Ward arrived 5 minutes late. Sleeves rolled, no tie. His gaze was surgical. He didn't smile. "Walk me through something you failed at," he said without preamble. Elena didn't flinch. "My marriage," she said. "I trusted the wrong metrics." Julian blinked, then nodded slowly. "And what did you learn?" "That survival isn't growth, but it's a start." He asked about her background, her AI research, her time away from the industry. She didn't hide her gap years, her freelance work under a pseudonym, her parenting juggle. He didn't interrupt. At one point, he leaned back, studying her in silence. "You don't just survive, do you?" he said finally. "You reshape." Elena met his gaze. "Only when the old shape tries to bury me." The silence stretched, not awkward, but expectant. Julian nodded once. Then he stood, extended a hand. "Welcome to Ward Tech," he said. "I'll be your direct mentor." Back at Mila's apartment that evening, Elena watched Lily sleep, her tiny chest rising and falling in rhythm. The California light bled gold across the hardwood. Outside, jacarandas swayed in the breeze, purple petals drifting like soft punctuation. Elena pulled her suitcase from the corner and started unpacking. A week later, dressed in a blazer she hadn't worn in 2 years and holding Lily's tiny hand, she stood before Wardtech's entrance, all glass and promise. She took a breath, squeezed Lily's fingers gently. "This is where it changes. She's not from Wharton or MIT. Good. She's not trained to play the same old games." The boardroom buzzed with the low hum of anticipation. Elena stood at the head of the polished table. 10 pairs of eyes on her, some skeptical, some bored, a few curious. Behind her, the Ward Tech logo glowed softly on the monitor. Her presentation slides cued in muted colors. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the California sunlight spilled over the city like molasses. She took a slow breath, then began. "Ethical AI isn't a feature. It's a foundation," she said, her voice steady. "And foundations built on bias crumble, not just technically, but publicly." A few eyebrows arched. One board member, Darnell Pierce, leaned back with his arms crossed. "And who decides what's ethical?" Elena didn't flinch. "Not code. People. People with checks, balances, transparency, and the courage to ask what harm looks like before the headlines do." Julian sat at the far end, unreadable, one finger tapping his lower lip. The debate unfolded briskly. Elena fielded questions on data privacy, regulatory risk, international variance. She cited case studies, but more importantly, told stories. Stories of real people misdiagnosed by rushed algorithms, of communities overlooked by design. When she finished, a hush settled. Darnell exhaled slowly. Beside him, board member Loretta Vaughn scribbled a note, then looked up. "I like her," she said. Julian didn't smile, but his gaze shifted, the way chess players reassess the board after an unexpected move. Afterward, Elena stepped into the hallway. Blood still thrumming, she passed a monitor displaying upcoming projects. A name caught her eye. Internal memo. Q4 projections, external strategy consultant input pending, Nathan Cole. NYC. The breath left her body in a short, cold gust. She blinked, stared again. Same name, same city. Elena? She turned. Celeste Kim, the journalist shadowing Julian for a profile, leaned against the glass wall with a paper cup in hand. Her smile was polite, but her eyes sharp. "You handled the room like a conductor," Celeste said. Elena offered a modest shrug. "A quiet baton helps." Celeste tilted her head. "Have we met before? Your face, it's familiar." Elena's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes shuddered. "I doubt it," she said. Celeste nodded, unconvinced but unwilling to press, for now. Later that afternoon, Julian summoned her to his office. It was cleaner than she expected, almost minimalist, but chessboard sat near the window. Mid-game. You navigated the board well today, he said without preamble. I want you on the executive strategy team. Elena froze. That's fast. Julian poured himself a glass of water. So's the market. We need instincts, not just credentials. And yours are unorthodox. Useful. He walked around the desk and set a manila folder in front of her. You'll start by reviewing our external consultant's inputs. He's based in New York. Doesn't travel. Elena opened the folder. The top page was stamped confidential. Below that, one name, Nathan Cole. Her fingers curled around the edges of the file. The room seemed to dim, though the sun hadn't moved. Julian raised an eyebrow. Problem? No, she said quickly. Too quickly. Just unexpected. He nodded. Review his materials. Flag what's useful. Discard what isn't. Later, alone in the quiet of her office, she stared at Nathan's name. 5 years of silence. Broken not by voice or visit, but by bullet point analysis and shallow strategy slides. The cursor blinked on her screen. Elena's smile fades. The past just sent me a memo. Elena? He stammered. You're her? No, I'm me. The boardroom was already half filled when Elena entered. A soft hush falling as the frosted glass door closed behind her. Her ivory blazer, tailored, assertive, unapologetic, caught the overhead lights and turned every glance toward her into quiet appraisal. Chairs scraped back as the executive stood in acknowledgement. All but one. Nathan Cole remained seated, eyes fixed on the screen in front of him like he hadn't just seen a ghost, or worse. A reckoning. Elena took her seat at the head of the table without hesitation. Her laptop clicked open. Apologies for the delay. Lily's preschool decided today was finger-painting chaos. She smiled thinly. Let's begin. Julian, seated beside her, simply nodded. You're right on time. Nathan finally looked up. His expression was tight, like a man realizing too late the chess piece he dismissed 5 turns ago was now threatening his king. Elena, he said, voice low, not quite recovered. You're her? She didn't blink. No, I'm me. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was electric. Julian gestured toward the screen at the front. We're reviewing Nathan's expansion strategy for Q2. Elena, I believe you had concerns? She turned to the projected slides, sleek graphics. Weak substance. Nathan's model assumes continued compliance from regulatory bodies we no longer have influence over. She began, clicking to the next chart. It underestimates demographic shifts, especially in Tier 2 markets, and ignores the AI transparency protocols going into effect this spring. Nathan shifted in his seat. We've used this model for 3 years. And the world's changed in 5. She countered, including who gets to define strategy. A few of the junior VPs exchanged glances. This wasn't the meeting they'd expected. The Zoom chime echoed. Haley's face appeared on-screen, perfectly styled. Lit by ring light. Smile ready for optics. Good morning, everyone, she said brightly, and then she saw Elena. Her smile faltered. Oh, she said. Elena didn't bother to return the greeting. Haley, welcome. We're reviewing the viability of Nathan's Q2 strategy. I've outlined the areas I believe require overhaul. Haley looked from Elena to Julian. Back to Nathan. I wasn't aware Elena was on this team. I lead this team, Elena said smoothly. Julian appointed me last quarter. Julian said nothing, but the ghost of a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. Nathan leaned forward, trying to reclaim the room. We don't have time to reinvent everything from scratch. Elena's gaze didn't waver. You said I slowed you down. Guess I'm the stop sign now. Nathan opened his mouth, closed it. His fingers drummed an anxious rhythm on the conference table. Across the room, Julian watched quietly, not just the argument, but the architecture of it. Who led? Who followed? Who unraveled? Haley, voice brittle now, glanced at Nathan on her screen. Nathan, what the hell is happening? If I'd known she'd come back like this, I would have never married Haley. Nathan stared at the skyline beyond the penthouse windows. The jagged lights of Midtown Manhattan fractured in the reflection of the glass. The night outside was alive, yellow taxis weaving like sparks, distant sirens carving through the hum. But inside, everything was still, still and cold. He held the wedding photo like it might morph in his hands. There they were, him and Haley on the steps of the courthouse. her white dress too bright against the gray of the winter day. His smile was wide, but it didn't reach his eyes. He saw it now, had probably always known. The tablet on his lap buzzed softly. He glanced down. Another article about Wardtech's rise. Elena's name was there again, tucked into the sidebar, but bold enough to sting. He opened her professional profile for the 5th time that week. Strategic Director, Equity Shareholder, Head of Ethical Innovation. Her resume read like a roadmap of everything he'd underestimated. Haley's heels clicked across the marble floor. "You're obsessed," she snapped before he could even greet her. He closed the tablet. Too slow. She saw anyway. "You're watching her again," she said, voice tight with something between accusation and fear. "It's research," he muttered. "She's interfering with projections." "She's interfering with you," Haley said. "You think I don't notice? The way you say her name like it's an answer you can't solve?" Nathan stood, agitated. "She's part of the team I'm supposed to collaborate with. I need to understand her angle." Haley laughed, not kindly. "Her angle? You mean the part where she rebuilt herself while you handed your future to a lie?" His eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" Her mouth opened, closed. Something flickered in her expression, doubt. Or maybe the last shred of a long-held secret slipping. Nathan advanced slowly. "Say it." Haley shook her head, backing toward the glass coffee table. "Haley." Silence. "Say it." She looked up at him, jaw tight. "I wasn't pregnant. I made it up." The words crashed through the room like shattering glass. "I was scared," she said, almost whispering now. "You were slipping away. You kept talking about the AI project like it still mattered." Like she still mattered. Nathan recoiled like struck. You trapped me? I saved you from wasting your life on a woman who only loved ideas." Haley hissed. He staggered back, as if the very walls were collapsing. "You disgust me," he muttered. She stepped forward, rage flaring. "Don't you dare turn this around. You got your company, your status, everything you wanted." He moved toward the door, numb, hands trembling. Haley's voice cracked like a whip. "You walk away now. I take everything." And then, her palm met his cheek in a violent slap. Echoing in the silence that followed. "If you want justice, I have something, but you need to use it wisely." The sun had already begun its slow descent behind the city skyline. Bleeding amber light into Wardtech's media office. Shadows stretched across the glass floor like ink spilled in slow motion. Elena sat at her desk. Fingers paused mid-keystroke, when the soft thud of a manila envelope landing near her elbow broke the silence. She looked up. Celeste Kim stood there. No notebook, no camera. Just her usual unblinking gaze and the kind of stillness journalists cultivated when a truth had too much weight to carry casually. "No label," Celeste said. "Just truth." Elena stared at the envelope. "Where did you get it?" "Let's say a nurse remembers things. Regrets things." Celeste leaned in. What Haley did, it wasn't just personal. It was fraud. And it steered millions in capital flow. You have every right to expose it. Elena hesitated, her fingers grazing the edge of the envelope. "Have you looked inside? I've seen enough to know it's real. Medical records. No prenatal appointments. A scheduled D&C. But dated months after she claimed she was showing." Elena closed her eyes. The phantom weight of that day, the divorce papers. Nathan's voice, her hand clutching her belly, pressed against her ribs. "Why now?" she asked. "Because you're standing at the cliff edge," Celeste said, "and I want to see if you jump, or fly." Alone in her office, Elena opened the file. There it was. Timeline discrepancies. Insurance claims filed under aliases. A scan of a forged OB/GYN signature. A note scrawled in a shaky hand. It was her idea. "I just wanted out." No name, but the implication seared. She called her lawyer. "If this leaks, Haley could sue for defamation, even if it's true." The lawyer said, "But if you wait until she uses her credibility at a board vote or public valuation event." The release becomes rebuttal, not attack. The word attack lingered like smoke. Later that night, Julian joined her in the rooftop garden where no one from PR dared hover. He didn't ask what was in her hands, just watched her face. "You knew something," she said, "didn't you?" "I suspected," Julian admitted. "Nathan's performance started cracking months ago. He looked at you like a man waiting to be indicted." "What would you do?" Elena asked, lifting the envelope. "Truth is a sword," Julian replied. "Choose when to draw it. Not every battle is worth the same blood." She looked down at the city. Somewhere beneath that chaos, Haley was still maneuvering, still building illusions. "We'll wait," Elena said, "until the board vote, not a day sooner." Celeste reappeared in the doorway. She'd been waiting, like always. As Elena tucked the envelope into her drawer, Celeste's smirk curved slow and sharp. "You're not the woman he divorced," she said. "You're someone far more dangerous. This is not a press conference. This is a reckoning." The ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton pulsed with a strange tension, part triumph, part waiting for impact. Chandeliers glinted like 1,000 unblinking eyes. Cameras rolled from every corner, and velvet ropes kept the eager press at bay. Wardtech's IPO had drawn everyone: investors, media, board members, and opportunists disguised in tailored suits. Elena stood just behind the curtain, her expression unreadable, her hands still. She wore black, not mourning, but power. Julian leaned close, voice low. "You ready for this?" She gave a small nod, eyes fixed on the crowd beyond the velvet. "Then let's begin." Out front, Nathan adjusted his tie with mechanical precision. He'd arrived confident, rehearsed, already envisioning the headlines. The screens beside the stage cycled through celebratory graphics. "WARDTECH goes public, the future of ethics." He stepped forward, smiled into the lights. "Thank you all for joining us on this historic." Celeste's voice rang from the press section, sharp and crisp. "Mr. Cole, before you continue, can you comment on the fraudulent medical records tied to your wife, Haley Brooks Cole?" The ballroom froze. Elena emerged then, no podium, no notes, just presence. On the massive monitors flanking the stage, Celeste's article was already being dissected live by anchors. Haley Brooks Cole faked pregnancy that preceded Wardtech leadership shift. Leaked records reveal. Gasps rippled like aftershocks. The board members turned pale in unison. Nathan stared at Elena, wordless. Julian stepped to the mic. Effective immediately. Nathan Cole has been removed from all advisory and strategic roles within Wardtech. The board has voted, unanimously. Haley stood near the back, her posture a fortress of denial. But when her name flashed in red across CNN's live crawl, the mask cracked, phones buzzed, eyes turned. One board member, visibly shaken, whispered into his headset. Moments later, an assistant stepped up to Haley. Discreet but firm. "Your inheritance trust has been frozen. Pending investigation." She went white. Elena took the stage, her voice calm but unmistakable. "Some truths take 5 years to surface. But when they do, they don't whisper, they roar." No applause, no interruptions, just that sentence, vibrating like thunder beneath silk. Nathan didn't wait for the questions. He stepped off stage, past cameras and whispers, through the hallway that once led to prestige and now felt like a tunnel of collapse. His phone buzzed. One message, one sender. "Divorce papers filed, Haley. I didn't lose you to Julian. I lost you to myself." The words hung in the air, soft but devastating. Nathan sat across from her, hunched over a chipped ceramic mug, the steam rising between them like something trying to make itself invisible. The cafe hadn't changed. Same creaky floorboards, same brick walls with ivy decals, same record player humming faint jazz in the corner. A place that once held hope now hosted the aftermath. Elena didn't sip her drink. She'd only agreed to meet because she knew this wasn't about her anymore. He looked older now, not just in the way time works, but like someone who had seen himself clearly for the first time and hated what stared back. His hands trembled slightly as he folded the drawing she'd handed him. Crayons, 4 figures, Elena, Lily, their home, a son smiling in the corner. No father. "I didn't know she'd leave that out," Nathan said, voice cracking. Elena didn't answer right away. "She draws what she lives." He nodded slowly, the silence growing heavier. "I suspected," he said after a long pause. "About Haley, about the timing, but I didn't want to face what that said about me. So I buried it, like I did with everything that mattered." Her gaze didn't waver. "You didn't just bury the truth. You buried us." He looked down, ashamed. "I deserved worse." She finally took a breath. Not of forgiveness, but of release. "You were right about one thing. I did reshape, but not because of you. In spite of you." Nathan reached into his coat and slid a small envelope across the table. "I had her name removed from the trust. Everything left goes to Lily now." It's not enough. I know that, but it's what I can start with. Elena opened the envelope, saw the notarized paperwork, and tucked it into her purse without a word. Will I get to know her? He asked. Tentative. That's up to you, she said, eyes soft but firm. But don't come with guilt. Come with grace. She doesn't need your shame. She needs your presence, if you can offer it clean. He nodded, eyes glistening. She deserves better than I ever gave you. She stood, her coat already on her arm. Then give her better. Don't look for redemption in me. Look for it in how you show up for her. Outside, the wind had picked up, sweeping dry leaves into corners. Julian stood near the curb, his hands in his coat pockets, gaze fixed on her. She stepped toward him. He reached out. You ready for forever? He asked. No bravado, just belief. Elena took his hand, and didn't look back. Some marry for money, others for power. I married for peace. The garden smelled of jasmine and quiet beginnings. Spring had unfurled its green hands over Northern California, painting every branch and blossom with patience. Elena stood at the edge of the aisle, her dress simple, silk flowing like memory. No veil, no orchestra, just soft laughter, a cello in the background, and sunlight slicing through the trees. Lily twirled near the altar. Her dress puffed like a dandelion. She ran her fingers over the framed drawing now displayed on a wooden easel, her family. Once incomplete, Julian's figure had been added, a confident sketch in crayon and approval. She had drawn him herself. Guests milled with quiet reverence. No paparazzi, just chosen people. Celeste arrived with her usual calm and a small envelope in hand. Elena recognized the headline without unfolding it, The Woman Who Didn't Break. The original print, uncreased. Celeste winked. For your archives. Julian's mother, regal in navy blue, approached with something glinting in her palm. My grandmother wore this during the war. It survived, so did she. She pinned it gently to Elena's collar. Now it's yours. Elena smiled, her voice catching only for a second. Thank you. Vows were brief, not because there was less to say, but because everything had already been earned. They spoke in the language of survivors who had nothing to prove but everything to offer. Thank you, pain, Elena said in her speech, voice warm and steady. You taught me to fight. Thank you, love, you taught me to rest. When the license was signed, Julian lifted Lily into the air, her giggles echoing through the garden. Now we're three, he said, beaming. Later, after the cake had been sliced and laughter had softened into twilight, a quiet figure lingered near the tree line. Nathan. He wore no tie, no edge of bravado, just silence. He didn't step forward, didn't speak, just watched, then left. A bridesmaid handed Elena a sealed envelope. He asked me to give you this. She turned it in her hands. No name on the front. No urgency. Back in their new home, in a study bathed in soft light, she opened a drawer labeled past, and placed it inside, unopened. What began with betrayal ended not in bitterness, but in clarity. Elena didn't win because she fought harder, she won because she endured with precision, grace, and unshakable truth, like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody. Justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. And sometimes, peace isn't the absence of war, it's the victory of having survived it.